All right, here we go. Another True Brew Bobcast here at the end of Détente Road at Cafe Détente. Special guest today, old friend of mine, Chris Valicevic.
Yeah, that's an old school Chris Valicevic. Here's what that is. You need T.D. Smith in there for that one.
Welcome, Chris. Chris made his,
Cheers.
like a lot of people, made his first latte today. How is it?
It's awesome. Matter of fact, I might have to break the secret and bring my wife out here for this one.
Oh yeah, she's a coffee drinker.
She's a coffee drinker, and she likes the peace in the outdoors. So
Good.
it might be a nice little getaway to the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, man, thank you for coming on and catching up with us. As most of the listeners know, Chris is our famous IceGator from back in the day, and man, I like to maybe start off with young Chris Valicevic, and I know we'll get to the phenomenon of the IceGators coming in, but I guess Cajun guy here, we know baseball and basketball and things like that. Hockey was just such a foreign deal for the whole community when y'all brought it. So, man, when you were growing up, what makes a hockey player? Kind of give us the back step of that. How did young Chris get into hockey?
Well, I'm kind of legacy on that side. So my grandfather is French Canadian, so he's a brodeur. And he was bilingual. They're just south of Sherbrooke in the mountains. So when he ended up moving to the States, I don't even know when the story was, eons ago. But so it was always my uncle played, and then when my brother and I were born, my dad and mom at the time decided, keep the family legacy moving, so we started playing hockey.
What part of the country is this?
So we're from Michigan. So I'm originally from Michigan, born and raised.
And what's your Croatian roots?
Croatian roots is my grandfather is an immigrant from what was Yugoslavia back then.
And they went to Canada?
No, the Yugoslavian side came through Pennsylvania and then ended up in Michigan. And the Canadian side, where the hockey comes from, ended up coming down into Michigan.
Okay.
So it's... I got two immigrant grandfathers, one through Ellis Island. So
we have like little leagues and all that kind of stuff. Was it that way for the hockey up in Michigan?
So hockey and baseball are almost identical in structure, right? The difference is with hockey is because it's a winter sport, usually when you get to the high school level, you don't necessarily play high school hockey, although it's gotten better. When I was a kid, the high school teams were not going to college type kids, but were good hockey players. And then the hockey I played was like travel baseball in the winter. So we played travel hockey all the winter in the very competitive side of things. So, and then when you get through that, you go on to college like everybody else does. And in the pros, the structure is the same. It's the NHL, the American Hockey League, and then what we were down here is the East Coast, which is AA.
So was the goal, you play, middle school hockey, you get into high school, and your goal is to try to get on a college team?
Yeah, there's two aspects in hockey, because hockey's got kind of two branches to what would be professional. So in the States, it's college hockey, and in Canada, it's called Major Junior. Now, Major Junior kids, those programs will start at 15 up there, and they're ineligible for U.S. hockey because they get a small stipend because those are all billeted kids, which means they put them up. There's some money for housing, so they got considered pro. So if you went that route, it was just a hockey route. It's kind of like getting drafted in baseball out of high school. Mm-hmm. Then you were just going for that. For them, once they started, and that was the main structure there, for the most part, those major junior kids' entire focus was to play professional hockey.
Was that an option for you to go play major junior, and or would they let you do that?
Yeah, you could go do that. That was a choice by player. It had nothing to do with
Would they let the
country.
States guys come in?
Yeah. Yeah, so Mike Madonna, who played for the Stars, was a major junior kid. He 2 years younger than me growing up. And there were some guys that were a couple years older than me who played in the NHL who went the major junior route. But there's more my mom's deal is education first, career second. So she didn't have much of there was no focus on going to play major junior. She wanted us to have two choices.
So what route did you take?
So we took the college route.
So
Now,
what-
I took the 7-year route because I decided to take a year off and had a girlfriend and figured that was the best path, and that wasn't such a good path. So, but I got a second chance. I ended up quitting hockey, going to Michigan State, was there for a couple years, ended up making Michigan State's hockey team as a walk-on, which is probably their first one in like 20 years. But didn't last very long because for the first year or so before that, I didn't take care of my grades. So that lasted another couple years, and then I ended up transferring to a small school in Minnesota, Division III, where I finished my education and what I thought was going to be my hockey career up until my senior year. So my senior year there, I ended up being the conference MVP, and that year they reinstituted the Shriners game in hockey, kind of like the football game was. Well, they instituted the Shriners game in hockey that year, and so I was selected out of our conference to participate. They selected 3 kids out of each side, the East-West, that were Division II, III hockey players. The rest were all Division I, and that was in Maine. So
And this is all NCAA.
this is all NCAA
rules.
stuff.
And they're regulated like any other sport.
Regulated like any other sport with institutional oversight and everything. Everybody got rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went and played that game, and there were a lot of AA scouts, independent teams that were at the game. So I got about 5 or 6 offers to come south. I didn't want to stay north. I came south.
So educate me and everybody else on that. So now you're finishing your college career. You're trying to go pro. So how is the hockey professional model laid out? Is it similar to baseball? Like you got triple A's and stuff like that?
Same deal.
Like you have, I think y'all were the Islanders or something like that.
So we were
formed by-
Minnesota. We were affiliated with Minnesota, which was Houston's farm team at the time. So
And so they start you off down there, and you just fight your way to try to make it to the show.
yeah, well, hockey at that point in time was at least a little bit different. So the NHL team has their roster. They will send guys down to fill probably 3/4 of the roster in the minors, with left them some spots to fill themselves. And then anybody who trickled down to AA at that point in time, where we are down here, most of the people were independent, signed independent contracts. So there's an independent league in baseball. That's what the ECHL is. They had affiliates, but they had to sign most of their own players. They would get some from the parent clubs, but for the most part, probably 90% of the team was independent signed contracts. Those contracts were good for about 24 hours. So I've been on an ice where a guy came out and skated and turned around and skated right off the ice and was cut.
Well, you know it going in. It sucks.
Well,
but
yeah. But it's that was the form. But back then the minor leagues, especially in the AA, weren't as organized. There was multiple leagues that weren't quite to the skill level the ECHL was, but they would push it. So there's teams down in the South in the East Coast League. There's teams up in the Midwest. There was a league out west that is now merged with the ECHL, which is the league we started in down here. So now it's an East-West league, and now every one of those teams has at least an NHL affiliate that helps drive them.
Okay, so what was your first opportunity out of school?
First opportunity out of school was a team in Greensboro, North Carolina. That was the team I selected to sign the contract with.
And that was ECHL?
ECHL was the East Coast Hockey League back then. So
Which is equal to AA?
it's AA.
Okay. And from where your business hat on right here, so they're a form for the NHL, but you're really trying to create your own money to survive as a team and as a league. Is that fair?
That is, the owners are independent. They have an affiliate which helps them get some players at a minimal cost.
Right.
But the obligation for the team, and definitely at the AA level, is they have a salary cap and they gotta sign their own players. So some on the business side is we have a cap. If they can supplement that cap a little bit with contract players because they were sent down, that's great because it gives them a little more money to spread. But they're still responsible for their own marketing, their own travel, their own per diems, their own jerseys, all of it.
Were y'all given incentive to draw a crowd? Like, I mean, if you had your contract, but was there any bonuses tied to like playoffs or crowd size or ticket sales?
No, that was against league rules. I can tell you that league rules get circumvented a little bit every once in a while type deal. There were some incentives that weren't necessarily on the table type deal back then. I'm not sure how it is now, but I can imagine for some of the key players, they probably have some incentives that are built into things. And really, as it moved on, some of that got moved into, like in my case, the league put a rule in where you could allow, I think it was 2 or 3 players, you could pay them year round and use them for promotional stuff to promote the team in the summer. Because most of the guys' contracts are only from the start of the year to the time you lose out, and then you're done. You have to supplement your income all summer long.
You're like a free agent?
Yep.
Did you have an agent?
I didn't have an agent. I didn't
Did y'all
need one.
need? Y'all didn't?
You didn't really need an agent until the next level, or some guys started moving to Europe because a lot of guys would move after they established themselves. They would start moving to Europe.
And who comes scout for y'all, look for y'all? The coach, or did they have like a GM or?
Well, they got people they contract that kind of probably run double duty, who do some scouting for teams for the AAAs, the NHL, but they also probably, not probably, they get a royalty or a basically consulting fee to send players. And since we had an affiliate, the NHL, or actually in our case, the AAA affiliate, we would send some players there to try out. If they didn't make it, they came to us. That was part of the deal. So it got them a AAA tryout. And on the other side, the AAA teams needed them to fill out their camps.
Yeah.
So they were okay with basically, it was essentially a sign. If you make that team, you stay. If not, you play for us. Mm-hmm. So it incentivizes people to come down here. But they're using their own scouting system. And most of the coaches have contacts, whether it's in college or the major junior kids, that if somebody was done, they'd make phone calls because the kids were looking for places. So they had their own placement agencies to some degree because the network isn't very big. You know, it's kind of like oil field a little bit. Once you start to get in a certain circuit or product field, you kind of start to know who everybody is and things.
So what percentage went from AA to the NHL, and does the NHL, is it kind of like football where, hey, I'm gonna draft and recruit, and they're gonna be an NHL or a professional football player for the next 5, 8 years or whatever, or do they pull up quite a bit?
So the movement is between the NHL and their AAA affiliate. So that's where they'll pull all their players. Now what happens is when that gets depleted, because it's usually an injury deal. So in the NHL, you'll get some guys injured, you'll pull some people up. When you pull some people from this level, that club at that level is going to pull people from below them up. So what your goal in AA was to get to AAA and maintain yourself to try and get a chance to go to the NHL. Matter of fact, our first player out of Louisiana was my brother.
Really?
Yeah, he played with us his first year. He was originally an Islanders draft pick in high school. He went to Lake Superior State. He won 2 national championships, lost a third in a row to the University of Maine at the time, and he didn't get signed. He ended up trying out at the AAA level as an independent. He was the last cut. He came here, played 1 season here. The next year he was in Houston at AAA. He had moved up 1 bunch. While he was there, Nashville Predators were going to be an expansion team looking for players to sign, and my brother earned a contract in the NHL. So he played there for a couple years, and actually I got a story for that one. So my best moment ever in hockey, and I've been lucky enough to play for a lot of good teams and have had some individual awards, but easily my best moment in hockey is I got a phone call one day from our head coach for the IceGators, Doug Shedden. And and it was probably year 3 or 4 that we were here. I can't remember that far back. Too many shots to the head on that one. But so my brother was playing in Houston. The Houston coach had called him and said, "Hey, we're short a couple defensemen right now. Do you think Chris would like to come and play with his brother?" And Doug had stopped asking me because at some point in time when I got down here, I was in transition mode, like from hockey, thinking about, okay, how am I transitioning out of hockey into a job? I like this community. Time to network and meet some people and figure out what I'm going to do, because I had no world experience besides when I was a kid, digging ditches and shuffling stuff. So he had called me and he said, "Hey, listen, I would never call you, but it's about your brother." I said, "Okay, what's up?" He goes, "Well, Houston is short of defensemen. They want to know if you'd like to come and play with them at the next level," because I had played with them at AA. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go play with them at a game up in Houston at AAA, not a problem." So he made the deal. We happened to be on and we never get these type of breaks. We were on a 10-day break because we play games after games. So we're on a 10-day break, and I'm like, great. It was a weekend or whatever. It was, I think, a Sunday. So I go up and I play with my brother. Well, unbeknownst to me, Nashville had called him up that day. And the coach of the team had asked Nashville, because usually what happens, if you get called up, you're out of the lineup just so that you don't get injured type deal. They tell you, they pull you, you get on a plane and move. Well, he had asked Nashville, he said, "Listen, his brother's coming, I need a defenseman. Would you mind letting him play?" And he's like, "Yeah, but when he's done, he's got to be on the road." I said, "Okay." He said, "Okay." So I got there and played the game. My brother didn't know this, and I didn't know this. So I got there and played the game, had a good game. It was great. Saw my brother. I get back on the road from Houston to come back to Lafayette, and I'm about halfway home, and I get a phone call from him. And he's like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm like, "Not much, just heading back." He's like, "How long you got?" I said, "About an hour." He's like, "Oh, that's not too bad." He said, "What are you doing Thursday?" I said, I don't know. What am I supposed to be doing Thursday? We're off. He said, well, I just got called up.
Nice.
And he said, my first game is going to be in Nashville on Thursday, and I'd like you to be there.
Great.
And I said, done. So I ended up calling the coach on my way home and said, Coach, I said, what we got on Thursday? So I was going to use my brother's old terms on him. He says, just practice. Why? I said, well, I'm not going to be there. I said, Robbie just got called up. And I said, I'm going to be in Nashville for a couple days. He says, well, I could probably tell you no, but I'm sure that wouldn't work. I said, I'm pretty sure you're right about that one. So he said, no problem. He said, good luck. And so I went up there. My best moment is watching my last name skate around that ice.
Nice.
And knowing that he made it based on hard work.
Yeah.
So.
Now, Robbie's how much older than you?
He's younger. He's 3 years younger. I'm the oldest. I got a younger brother, younger sister.
Nice.
We're all 3 years apart.
So what makes a good hockey player and a great hockey player? Like, I mean, again, I keep comparing it to sports that I'm more familiar with. I mean, I know some great athletes that were good football players, never made it to the bigs. They just didn't make it great. I mean, what's the difference between somebody who's AA, AAA, and somebody that can play in the bigs?
So AA, AAA limitations are usually speed and height. And I don't care what sport you're in, that's usually it. Right?
Why is height important?
Well,
I can see speed.
Because depending on the game, the physicality of what goes in, height can be one of the things. If somebody gets pushed around, they're of no use, right?
So you're talking about really the size of the person.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like a forward in basketball or something. You got to have a little ass on you.
Yeah, I mean, Charles Barkley is the exception to the rule on that side, right? But everybody else is like 6'9".
So what's a good size of weight for hockey?
See, that's the funny thing. It's all positional. Because,
okay. All right.
So when I retired, I'm just under 6 foot. I played at 210 to 215. When I started pro, I was an above average size defenseman. When I retired 9 years later, I was a small defenseman. Everybody who was playing back then was 6'2 to 6'5.
They just started looking and recruiting bigger guys.
Well, bigger guys became more skilled. It's just a matter of what's available, and size has started to become a bigger deal. Kids were becoming more mobile. They were becoming more skilled because traditionally the bigger kids weren't necessarily as fast. Well, now they're 6'5", and they're also as fast as you.
Well, you're 10 years younger than me, so you was right in front of the scientific training and nutrition and all those things that keep to improve. Athletes just started getting better and better, huh?
Yeah, I think the coordination started getting better and better at some point in time. Like kids nowadays, like you look in high school, I'll use for example. Back when I was in high school, 250 was a huge kid.
Yep.
250 doesn't hit the Richter scale, offense or defensive line.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's true.
They're not. They're just bigger now. And whether that's the food, the nutrition, supplements, preservatives, I can't tell you. But I can tell you the biggest difference, going back a little bit to the question, the difference at every level between size and speed. So athletically, there's going to be a level where you tap out, right? So, and I don't care who you are. There are very few people who are freaks of nature in the NFL because everybody is a freak of nature in the NFL. So it's kind of like those jumps are always a speed jump from high school to college to pro, and every level of pro is another level of speed and decision making, which brings in the other side, and which I think
It's a skill set.
well, but it's also the mentality and the mental acuity that goes with success, right?
Was that what made you a good scorer? You thought quicker?
Well, yeah. I mean, really knowing the game and being instinctual about where pucks are going and being able, in my case at that time, to be able to force people to do things they didn't want to do was part of what I did. And that was just position. That's knowing the game and being intelligent about it. And what you find is there's a lot of guys who get trapped in the lower leagues who don't have the physical skills, but they survive at those levels because they have all the mental skills. They have all the instincts of knowing where to be, when to be, reading plays, knowing what's going on. And especially as you get higher, those windows close. So athletically, everybody's the same. So the thing that usually differentiates a player at that level is the mental side. Both not only mentally knowing the game and studying it, and the mentality that goes with the grind to have to go do it. Because in our case, when you get on the ice, there's obstacles and things are going to be difficult. And you can watch one of the greatest things, I used to teach kids a lot. And I said, your effort is dictated by you, by nobody else.
That's true.
And what wall you're willing to go through
Yeah.
is only an obstacle if you're willing to stop in front of it, right? Because if you're not willing to stop in front of it, you're going to figure out how to get around it, through it, under it, or over it at some point in time. But it's the grind at that point in time and the willingness to make things difficult for your opponent. And those people, there's a guy on our team called Jay Murphy. He wasn't the fastest skater, and he was probably the ugliest dressed man in hockey. He had tape around everything, pads sticking out, jersey tucked in, couldn't skate, shot. He was one of the most intense competitive people I've ever met. Even in practice, I used to, pardon the French, piss him off all the time. Because every single time he'd come down,
I'd
screw with him. Because his deal was the puck is going to go in the net. And you're going to have to kill him to stop him. And even in a drill, if I let him go by me just so I could poke the puck away from him, just when he thought he was going to score, and it went in the corner, he'd bang his stick, get mad, but he'd still go pick up the puck and make sure it ended up in the net. Every single drill. And that's the way he played, like all the time. So when you had to play against him, you had to play against the mentality. You were going to have to outwork him, and that wasn't going to happen. So,
Michael Jordan was asked one time, I'll never forget, I use it all the time. They was trying to get out of him what makes him so different and great. And he said, when you're watching the game of basketball, everything just seems to be going, everybody's running wide open, everything's fast, fast, fast. He says, but for me, everything just appeared in slow motion. And in other words, the game had slowed down because he just sort of knew what everything was going to do. And kind of like to your point, he can dribble on one side with one hand, and it's going to draw some people in. I mean, the game seemed fast to the looker. And so, to your point, I think that's where the intelligence of the game comes. But I got to tell you, Chris, there's a big difference between dudes on ice on skates and a puck flying around and a big basketball and guys running. Y'all were moving, dude. I mean, y'all were flying out there.
yeah,
I mean, the game's a lot faster than basketball, it appears.
it is just
With
because
sticks and a freaking hard puck.
contact is part of it, right? Because in basketball, if you could come up and knock a guy down who's dribbling the ball, then things would move much quicker than they do, right? Because you can't. So the thing about hockey is it's the biggest gray game. It's not black and white. There are very few situations that are black and white because everything has a shade to it. How many people are coming at you? Where's the puck? Who's coming behind it? What's going on? So you make decisions based on colors of gray, because very few things are black and white, unless it's just you and him. But even then, it's not black and white, because does he shoot left-handed or does he shoot right-handed? Does he have a good shot or doesn't he have a good shot? Like, those are all things that come into play when even in basketball, right? If a guy can't go left, you make him go left, right? In hockey, it's the same way. I'm trying as a defenseman to put you in a position to do the most uncomfortable thing I can imagine you doing. And my assessment of you means I don't think you can do this. So this is what I'm going to force you to do.
Yeah.
And so those
Is that
are the
what made
things.
you a good scorer? What made you a good scorer?
Well, that's part of just knowing where to be. And the other thing is I shot a puck about 100 miles an hour. That helps.
help.
That helps. That helps.
But still, with you being a phenomenal scorer, it wasn't uncommon to have a 2-1 game. You know, all of that action, all that speed, all that, and you still only allowing 2 points a game sometimes. Maybe 5 or 8 every now and then. But
Yeah, but I mean that's because unlike basketball, we have a guy like Shaq that sits in a small net with a bunch of equipment on, who has a habit of not making things fun on your side all the time, too. So you have the extra guy. It's the extra burden, and on more true story, those guys are a bit cuckoo. Every sport's got their stuff, you know. Goaltenders are ours.
they special.
They're very special, because anybody who wants to stand in front of a 100-mile-an-hour slap shot from 10 feet away, because I've buzzed the tower on a couple goaltenders, and they tend not to flinch. Now, if that's just because they can't react to it fast enough, but it's not really that fun. That's one position I would never let my kids do.
Shit, I wouldn't want nothing to do with it. All right, let's get to a little IceGator. So the year is the early 90s, 93 or 4, I believe.
95 is our first year.
First year. And what year did you come?
95.
So you was the first year.
I played the first 7 years the IceGators were here.
Nice. Okay. Good to know. All right. So let's zoom out a little bit. So what was happening back then? Why was the league coming south? Was it just whose idea was all of this to bring this to foreign land and try to excite a little town like Lafayette, Louisiana? I mean, were y'all in on the mission, or you was just coming down to play hockey?
Oh, the players were coming down to play hockey. They knew nothing. I can tell you this: nobody knew anything about South Louisiana. Nobody knew anything about Louisiana barely at all, besides New Orleans and Mardi Gras. Like, I didn't. Like, you just don't have that much knowledge about it. Mm-hmm. One way, because for us, you know, the hockey states are the hockey states, Canada and things like that. Most of your time is spent up, and nobody knew anything really about the I-10 corridor for all intents and purposes. So it was one of those things that I played my first 2 years pro in Greensboro, North Carolina. And the southernmost team at that point in time was Charleston. Charleston, South Carolina had a team. And I think the Berrymans were the minority, were the operating partners.
The brothers.
And so I think they were looking for new markets. And the league was, at that time, hockey was pushing itself south more and more. So with South Carolina being in, North Carolina had 3 teams at that time in the ECHL. Charlotte, Raleigh, and Greensboro had teams. South Carolina had a team. They were pushing down to Tallahassee at that point in time. So it was migrating south.
All the same league.
All the same league. So in hockey, the NHL is I got a little fight with the NHL Hall of Fame for a variety of different reasons, but one of which is they fail to recognize the Hall of Fame is about recognizing, I guess, the people who've helped contribute to hockey and things like that. And I think the minor leagues are underrepresented because most of the NHL markets you see today were first inhabited by minor league teams. Raleigh has a team, North Carolina,
So
the
arguably, you
Hurricanes.
created the market. You
We created
the appetite.
Yeah, right. So pushing it down made it economically viable, right? And as it kept getting pushed down,
Yeah.
the viability in the market kept growing and growing.
Yeah.
So at one point in time in the state of Louisiana alone, like when I found out I was coming here, in about year 4 or 5, there were like 6 pro hockey teams in the state of Louisiana. In our league alone was Baton Rouge and New Orleans.
I remember that now.
And then Lake Charles, Alexandria, and Shreveport all had teams in another league.
But Lafayette was the first, right?
Lafayette was the first down here. So Lafayette got a team, but Pensacola had a team. Mississippi had a team back then, getting established. It ended up being, if you just go up and down the I-10 corridor, it ended up being our trips you'd go down to New Orleans, you'd pop up to Baton Rouge, you'd shoot across, you'd hit Biloxi, Mobile, you'd shoot up to Jackson. Mississippi had a team at one point in time.
So
Pensacola.
you was in SEC, man.
Pensacola, Tallahassee, Miami had a team at one time. Fort Myers has a team.
And I remember now that you're bringing it up.
So as hockey started expanding, the NHL expanded shortly after those markets were all established. That even includes like not even in our league. Like Dallas had a team in Fort Worth and a team in Dallas in the minors at one point in time. San Antonio had a team in the minors. Like they have pushed it into California, into a variety of different potential markets that it wasn't there before, and it expanded the game. So my hope is one day that the guys, even before me and after me type deal, like there were players in those organizations. The IceGators have 3 people with retired numbers. All 3 are in the East Coast Hockey League Hall of Fame. So John Spoltoro passed away a few years ago. Louis Dumont, who I think is the all-time leading scorer, he'd been around forever, still lives in Lafayette, and still live in Lafayette.
They still got them hanging?
No, they don't have. The Cajun Dome took them down in the remodel, and they haven't made it back up yet. But that's a whole nother fight for a whole nother day.
Damn right,
Type deal. But guys even before us that helped build, teach, learn. Like I think that story on how hockey expanded needs to be told because they have guys in from all over the world in the Hockey Hall of Fame. What they don't have is the people who are the grassroots people that helped establish communities. Like there's no place I go in this town for the most part where somebody doesn't walk up to me and start talking about hockey, and it's one of the best moments I have in a day. Although my kids think it's a little strange that strangers walk up to me, but they'll come up and they'll just start talking about the fun they had, whether they were kids. Now, for some reason, a lot of bartenders used to go to the game because they'll tell me they used to go to the game. But, they took their families. They had a good time. There were 12,000 people in the building. And it's always just a great conversation because they're reminiscing about a good time.
I can speak for myself. I was probably the second wave. First off, when I heard we was getting a hockey team, I'm like, what group of drunks lost the poker game?
Bob Wright, Ernie Parker, and Logan Nichols.
Dude, and we might get served papers if we get into that story. So we'll
might want to leave that one alone.
Right. We'll leave that one alone, but we'll have them on the podcast one day. How about that? But come to find out, it was brilliant. When did you and the players realize y'all had this big energy wave and something special going on for a town? Was that year one, or it was really?
Well, year one, I mean, but we didn't find out. So my brother, I mentioned earlier, was the last cut out of his AAA camp. And so I was in Greensboro coming down here. And so he got cut and flew up to Greensboro, and we drove in. So we got here one night, checked into the Shoney's when the Shoney's was out on 90 there. Mm-hmm. Next morning, woke up, went to the team meeting. Told us a lot about Louisiana, because after the team meeting, we ended up at Downtown Alive.
Nice.
And we're like, okay, we're not in Kansas anymore, right. Toto, right? But we had training camp in Baton Rouge because the arena wasn't done yet.
Okay, they did the Blackham first, and then they went to the Dome, right?
No, Dome was first. So they did all the subsurface equipment in the Dome, put the floor in, but it wasn't ready for us to do camp in.
Okay.
So we did training camp in Baton Rouge. Mm-hmm. And then when training camp broke, we came back, like none of us had seen town, really. Mm-hmm. So we got into town, had the meeting, turned around and went to Baton Rouge. The only thing we saw was the Cajun Dome, right? So went to Baton Rouge, had camp, team was picked, turned around, came back, left our cars at the Cajun Dome. We didn't even have apartments yet. Left our cars at the Cajun Dome, hopped in the team bus, was given our team sweats, and we took off for 2 weeks.
Y'all on the road?
On the road for the first, we were on the road for the first month of the season. Because not only was the arena getting finished up, LAGCO came right after that. So when we got done from the first two weeks, we came back, hopped in our vehicles, got assigned apartments, went back, settled in for like a night, turned around the next day, got back on the bus and went back out for another 2 weeks. So the first time we had seen anything, we hadn't even seen the Cajun Dome.
Y'all were 2 months in.
We're a month in, well, 5 weeks, yeah. We're in, so we're getting back to town, and on the way back in, Bruce Levine, who currently works with the Dallas Stars, who is our radio guy, said, guys, because I think our attendance was, what was it? The original was like 9,500 or something like that. He's like, I just found out from the office, we're sold out for the opening night. We had no idea what that meant.
Right.
Type deal. We hadn't even seen the arena. We hadn't even skated on the ice. So we got in that night, and we got in our locker room for the first time and saw the arena a little bit. Woke up, went for our skate, but the first night was a circus because nobody knew what hockey was down here.
It was.
But the game does suit the culture.
Yeah.
You can go have a beer.
Eat a hot dog.
You can eat a hot dog. It's cool because
Yeah.
it was still warm outside. It's cool. It's not overly expensive at that point in time. I think upper bowl seats were $5 a ticket. Family of four walked through the door for $20 type deal. But the game is fast. There's fighting, and it's real type deal. And you can have a cocktail. You don't even have to go to the bar. You can just go to a hockey game without getting in trouble.
Oh no, it was. I remember the first time I went. It was exciting. Me and my wife both went, and then you start getting your company involved, and everybody. It was just a big outing. But it took a couple years to even learn the rules on what the hell y'all were doing out there.
Yeah. They ended up doing a good job of doing some things like doing walkthroughs into our like an after hours hockey learning session where you could come in and they would walk you through, show you the equipment, explain the rules, because there's really tripping is tripping, hitting somebody with the stick is holding, most people know that from football or basketball, whatever it is. But it was the icing rule, the 2-line pass, and the offsides is what really messed people up. So they explained some of that, and after a couple years, there was some transplants from the oil field who are Canadian, who kind of helped out in some of that stuff.
Oh, they figured it out. It was just the atmosphere and the energy, and it was a lot of fun. So the promoters and all, it just seems like the experience, just cool music, loud music, a lot of lights, a lot of games, and a good DJ and a bunch of people shooting T-shirts in the air and all that good stuff. I mean, I know you wasn't staring at the crowd; you was on the ice, but it was all the components of just a good outing, you know.
Oh, it at that point in time, you didn't need a big attention span. There was no patience needed. There was always something going on.
Oh yeah.
You know, so whether it be in the stands with promotions and people running around and stuff, horn dudes. We had horn dudes.
I forgot about
we had
that.
we had Zambonis and cars on the ice and games in between intermissions. You didn't, to the point where people were tailgating. They'd get to the games early and things, and I know the first time the puck got dumped in and hit the glass, the whole place erupted. And we were sitting on the bench going, okay, because that was a nothing.
Oh,
that was like somebody throwing a lob in, and they were all fired up, and we kind of started laughing, but people took to it. I mean, it was partly because you could talk to the players. The players early on were very accessible, and they continued to be accessible. And the front office did a lot of promotions, so we did a lot of work. Like the judge advocate had something going on. I know I've talked to more than one school about things, and they had promotions where guys would go out and talk to different people. They'd have events, people would show up. United Way, whatever it was, St. Jude would always request some players and things, and people got to know people, right? And I think at its core, the South, especially down here, which is, I'm going to tell everybody in this podcast, it's one of the quietest kept secrets anywhere on how community-based this is. Because you don't get, when somebody asks you up north, who's your mama, who's the daddy, they're just making small talk because they have no clue. Down here, they're going to figure out who you're attached to and whether they like you or not. Now, they might like you, but they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And it is because it is such a tight community. And it's great. The guys loved it, right? Nobody ever wanted to leave. And the only guy who wanted to leave got his nose broken before he left because he wanted to leave by one of the other guys on the team. You're not going to leave us without, first blood. Okay. And then he was gone. True story.
So why? Let's talk about the fights a little bit. So everybody loves a fight, but it was just a lot of testosterone out there, a lot of competition. Somebody did somebody wrong. You're gonna. Hey man, I owed you that kind of deal. I mean, was there
all the above?
All the above.
So some of it is to get the team fired up and riled up. Some of it is there's a price to pay for something somebody did. And some of it is just two people don't like each other.
So sometimes you'll get a team coming in and there was some unfinished business from time to point, because sometimes the puck wasn't even dropped and it was on, bro. So it was like, hey, I gotta handle this real quick.
Yeah, and more than one occasion. So kind of like baseball, there's unwritten rules. There's unwritten rules about who you can touch. Don't ever touch a goalie. You touch a goalie, that's an instant fight, and it doesn't matter who's on the ice. You don't touch the goalie. And everybody knows that. So if you touch the goalie, you know somebody's going to come up and smack you.
And hey, you deserve that.
Oh, yeah, no, you're looking for a fight at that point in time. And most of the people are willing to oblige. Like, there's a lot of guys, matter of fact, a bunch of them still live in town, that old knuckle draggers, but super good guys. but they had it. Part of their job was to make sure that hockey kind of it's a little biblical and it kind of patrols itself. It's biblical because it's very much an eye for an eye. Like that way it doesn't get out of hand. So if you do something, we're going to do something. That's the way that works. And if you want to continue, then it's a matter of will. Are we going to continue and escalate this thing? And you've seen, all you got to do is type in IceGator fights and you'll see some of the escalations of those. But on the other side, because it's such a physical game, that when people get out of hand and start to take liberties, there's an instant repercussion for that, which makes sure the sticks stay down for the most part. And people don't start getting crazy with their sticks, because if you do, somebody's going to come, you're going to fight. Like, you got to keep your stick down. That's about respect. If you take a cheap shot on somebody, somebody's going to fight. So just understand. You understand really quick that if you're going to do something, there's going to be it's cause and effect. If you cause something, the effect is you might not like. And even if you win a fight, there'll be somebody else coming to test again and again, which makes long nights. And those guys, I mean, it's a tough living having to fight a lot because, you know, Rob McKegg, who's still holds the record for the East Coast Hockey League in penalty minutes for a season and was suspended for 12 games.
Now, was a screw loose there? Did he just like to fight? Was he just...
He liked to fight. He got a lot of attention about the fighting because he liked to fight. But also, it was kind of part of his job type deal. He was my defensive partner for a while. Part of his job was to make sure I could do my job. And so you learn really quick a lot of times because you kind of, at some point in time, you start to get specialized a little bit. My first couple years, I did a little bit more fighting. My last years, I did almost none.
Yeah, I was going to say, you probably age out of that kind. You probably get tired of getting hit in the head.
Well, you age out a little bit because you get some respect. And on the other side, like, I got skilled into a skill position. And at that point in time, that was more the focus.
Let those defenders duke it out.
You got some guys who keep peace, and you got some guys who solve problems. And my job was to solve problems, and my partner's job was to keep peace. So at that point in time, everybody kind of had a balance of what goes on. So, but the fighting side of it, you know, I had buddies on other teams. When they had to come into our arena, they circled it because they just knew it was not going to be a fun night. It was not.
Well, we loved it. We loved the drama, man, and we loved everything that was in it, and you could tell it wasn't staged. I mean, you're not gonna, you know, fake a fight, but it's well, we sure appreciate it, everything you did. So okay, so you're down in Louisiana, you playing hockey. Life's good, and then you said, okay, I'm not going to be able to do this forever.
Yeah, you don't make enough money playing in the minors to make it a career. I mean, it's one of those things you chase. In my instance, I probably chased it a couple years too long because I was chasing a championship at some point in time. I had done everything else I wanted to do as far as individual stuff. I was in 3 finals and lost all 3.
Damn. Yeah.
1 in North Carolina and two with the IceGators.
God, I remember that now.
And the last one, we won the first 2 games on the road and came home and hadn't lost maybe 8 games all season at home and lost 4 straight. 3 of them in overtime.
I remember that. That was so painful.
That's an understatement.
Yeah. So how many years does a hockey player typically have on average?
Well, it's like most leagues. Most pro leagues have it because of like the NHL, right? They have their pension qualifications and things like that. So most of that is about a 3-year deal for most people, right?
3 years in the league?
3 years in the league.
Well, how does like the Gretzky's and all those?
Well,
guys?
no, those are like the Peyton Mannings. Like in football, you only play football for about 3 years, because year 4 starts starts you in the pension program, qualifies you. So they have it locked out where 3.5 years is usually the life expectancy of most people. Mm-hmm. The pensions for all those are based on the longevity.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at is the Gretzky's and them, like Peyton Manning or like Michael Jordan, LeBron James. There's always those exceptions to the rule, always. But for the average guys who are third, fourth liners, fifth liners, right?
3-4 years.
3-4 years.
So they still young, man. They in their mid-20s. They can move on and go get a new something.
No, it's the hard. I think it is the one thing that we all face. I know this from my son transitioning out of college baseball, right?
One day it comes.
Well,
they come get them, or you have to give them up. But one day
it comes for everybody.
It
like
does.
Whether it's high school and STM, Lafayette High, whatever it is, like that's your sport, but that might be your cap. You might be a great high school football player, but you're not big enough to play college, or you're not fast enough.
Yeah.
But you love it, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do next because all you've ever done is that.
Look, I was a slow, skinny white boy, but I love football so much. And I had a cousin. They said, "Look, you don't hand your pads in; they come take them from you." And it's a sad day, but not many people play on your level, y'all level. You got what, 8 years?
I got 9 years pro, 7 here and
so
2 in North Carolina. And I played.
Man, that's a hell of a run.
Hey, listen, I got zero complaints. Well, I can complain because I got a new hip out of it, and I got 2 new knees out of the deal.
So, all right, that's a good point to ask you. Knowing that, if you would talk to a younger Chris Valicevic, would you just tell him that, hey man, get out 4 years early, and you're gonna save your knees and hips, or you say shit on it? I'm good. All right.
No, because
how are you to know anyway?
But what the experiences, the things I got to do and see, you can't get anywhere. That's the hard part, right? That people don't. They see all the glitz and glory and glam. They don't ever, the aftermath is what nobody ever sees, right? What the NFL deals with, hockey players passed away. One who played here in town, he was a fighter, Derek Bogart. What you never see is the aftermath of guys limping around, injuries that haven't. They do a much better job taking care of those things now, but back when I played, you either hurt or injured, and nobody was ever injured. So you're always hurt.
Does the NHL, or does the professional hockey guys, do they run into the same thing as the football players? Y'all have any brain damage or just banged up joints and bones?
No, most of the issues they run, and a guy named Chuck Thus, who used to play here with me, ended up playing kind of down the 10 corridor, played in Mississippi, played in Mobile, ended up settling in Mobile. He works with the PHPA, which is the Minor League Players Association. And most of it has to do with basically getting a hold of guys and putting a program in place for people who are having some issues and troubles, PTSD, whatever you want to call it, depression, life issues and things. And it's an issue. I mean, it's an issue for as much as I'd like to say I've taken one too many shots to the head, and I know I have. I've seen guys it really affects, and it's difficult.
Yeah, I would imagine y'all have way more traumatic injuries just for the speed and the lack. Y'all don't have a football helmet out there, so I'm sure there was a lot of head-on-head.
Actually, it's less head-on-head than football.
Less head-on-head, but
because
more violent because...
More violent with the fighting.
With the fighting. So it's the fightings of
the fighting is predominantly... The guys who fought a lot predominantly struggle more than...
Like a boxer.
Yeah.
So they got effects like a boxer. They'll slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, and they can. I mean, some guys are fine, but some guys aren't.
Yeah.
And because most of what we do physically hitting somebody is with shoulders, right? And so you learn to
Hit and
adjust
be
your
hit.
yeah, you learn to adjust your body, you learn to brace yourself, you learn to do certain things. If you get caught with your head down too much, you're not going to last in the game long. People get knocked out all the time that way. But most of the head contact really comes from mostly a fight or somebody gets plucked accidentally with a stick or an elbow or something. But that's not, to me, that's not as much. I don't watch the game entirely as much as I used to. But it's unlike football where you're basically, to get your pads square, your head's got to go with them at some point in time. And I don't care if you get your head up or not. If you're tucking your shoulders, you got to get down as a defender, and you're gonna earhole somebody.
Has the game changed a lot? Like, I see basketball has changed where I don't even recognize it. It looks like a sting ball, three-point scoring contest. You know, I guess I don't know. It's not as appealing to me as it used to be. Has hockey changed a lot?
I think all the sports. Hockey has changed quite a bit because
Did the rules change it, or just the
some of the
strategy
rules.
of the
I mean,
game?
it's no different than football. I mean, they have a contact to the head, but the skill level has changed, and the way they've moved the game is almost predominantly on a skill level, and a little less on the physicality side of things. So you get more players. I look at it as the players are predominantly all one form of themselves, just different skill levels. Type deal. And then the guys that stand out are the guys with the skill level but still have an old school mentality. You might not like them, but it's fun to watch a Brad Marchand who's going to get up in somebody's ear hole and bark at them and kind of chop at them a little bit. There's guys like that still around that make it interesting. But as far as the contact and the physicality, it's not near what it used to be.
So you had 3 boys.
I have 3 boys.
All right, so you stayed in Louisiana. How was your transition? I've been knowing you for
forever.
And you seem to smooth in it better than anybody I
but
ever
my
saw.
exit, when I got down here, at some point in time, my window started closing because I was an older player. I was in my late 20s. And actually, I'm 56. 30 was the hardest year for me. 40 wasn't, 50 wasn't. They were no problems. 30 was so difficult because I knew as an athlete at 30, my time was really short. Like there's no window that goes past 30 very often. I mean, I got a couple extra years out of it, but
it seemed like you wasn't fooling yourself ever. You was look, man. I just like the way you handled your business, but it wasn't like you. You never struck me as the dude that was going to go to the car dealership and ride on your and wear your IceGator jersey all day. You know,
No.
I mean, you were prepared. You knew this was going to happen. You wasn't fooling yourself. You wasn't trying to live in the past. I thought you impressed me with being able to do that. But was that just on the surface, or was that your upbringing and you was just
I think it's just my mom always had this deal, right? So she never sugar-coated anything to some degree. She wasn't blunt about it, but it was always after a game, what did coach say? I saw him talking to you when she knew he was yelling at me. Saw him talking to you. Yeah, well, he was yelling at me about this and this and this. And her answer was always, and so you probably better listen. Well, I'm not playing. Her answer was, well, then I guess you better work harder. There wasn't an excuse for it. Like there was no out about that. You were going to do it on your own accord, and she wasn't going to intervene in that type deal. So you realistically, kind of took a self-evaluation all the time. And I was fortunate enough to have some coaches who said, your mistake is your mistake. It's never somebody else's. And even if it's their mistake, it's still your mistake if they score a goal.
And that transferred in your life.
So, yeah, it's one of those things that you just took ownership for it because you knew if you did and learned from it, because our coaches made us, like, understand, okay, what did you do wrong? What do you think you should have done? Had a conversation because it was always about why. Because I told you, hockey is a gray game. So one time you could make a decision and it'd be wrong. The same decision is totally right based on one other variable that was in the equation, right? So when you're talking to, when I was growing up, it was you had to own your mistakes. You weren't allowed to push them off on anybody else. It's nobody else's fault. Why did you make a mistake? Don't ever let it happen again. That's it.
Did you legacy parent? Did you parent like your mom parented you?
To some degree. I mean, my boys are all my boys because I have 3 from my first and 3 from my second. And, for the most part, I'm pretty direct with them. And
Did any of them want to play hockey?
They did, but the problem was hockey at when they were old enough was declining so fast.
Yeah.
There weren't enough kids in every age bracket. And the closest games were Houston and Dallas. Like I coached some of the kids in the area, some teams in the area for a little while, and those numbers dwindled really fast. So they didn't play. They played their own
baseball,
sport.
football, everything. And
Baseball,
it doesn't matter,
football,
right? It doesn't matter what sport.
But that was the deal with me. They didn't have to play hockey, and I don't care what they do. Matter of fact, the better they do something,
Different.
yeah. And
I was that way with my kids. Just do something different.
well, I learned, especially because my brother-in-law played hockey with me, married my sister, was pro, and my brother played pro. Like, it's hard for some kids. Like, I didn't realize this until my nephews were older, and they played hockey up north in Michigan. That legacy kind of carries a weight to it, right? Mm-hmm. And so living up to it all the time can be difficult about things. And I didn't necessarily need my kids to live up to it. All I figure out of sports is this: if you're good at what you do and you can move on, great, awesome. But sports has become this pinnacle of getting millions of dollars when it's designed for life lessons, how to deal with people, how to learn things, how to deal with failure, how to deal with success.
Well, look, man, you got out of the hockey profession and came in the oil field where nothing's more cyclical. And
That's an understatement.
Up and down, and you got to have a stomach and emotional intelligence about that to do good. But I was there when you became a quick student of it, and I think you understood the value of a relationship and how, understanding the service and then understanding you got to have a relationship in order to, because you can be pretty good to sell 1 or 2 jobs, but you better be excellent to keep a relationship and keep an account alive. So talk to the audience a little bit about that, man. What your lessons learned there, and how did you transfer being a professional athlete to? I mean, you're over a lot of account managers and salesmen and business development and all that. You've been doing that for forever now.
Yeah.
But do you enjoy it? And did hockey move you over there?
But like we were just talking about, though, I think part of it has to go with the sports and the learning things as you grow up, right? And the farther along you get, the more it becomes, especially when you turn pro. I got 30 people in the locker room, and not every one of them I'm going to like.
Were you the captain?
Some of the years. I was assistant captain some of the years.
But you were pretty much leading.
Well, yeah, I had my roles on the team. And that's the other thing that you learn with sports. Skill sets fit in certain slots. Mm-hmm. The idea is that the teams that are really good, people will fill those slots. If you learn to fill and become valuable, because there you see a gap. Well, I can
Well,
fill a
I
gap.
bet you were making. I bet you was doing some heavy lifting for your coach, because sometimes a coach
Oh,
can
yeah.
get players up, and sometimes it takes players to get other players up. You know what I mean? I guarantee you was a great picador, number two man for your coach.
So yeah, and I wasn't necessarily very vocal. My job was on the ice, and I wasn't one of the rah rah guys. And we had some great captains. Rob Weingartner, he was good because you always knew he was going to give you 100% effort. He was going to stick up for you, and he was all 5'9".
He led by example.
Yeah,
He did.
and you had some guys that would respect is one of those things you earn, and it's one of those things that gives you a voice for all. But you have to earn it. If you walk through the door,
You're not getting away with it.
no, and even if it's given to begin with, you can lose it pretty quick based on your actions, right? So if you can take the lumps like everybody else does and move forward, then you set the tone for everybody else, right? So usually the guys in the locker room that are the oldest, a lot of times they take a beating more than everybody else, but they're the ones that the coach chooses to pick on. Because number one, if he can pick on them and they take it, they can pick on everybody else. And that's just how it goes. But organizationally, in dealing with people means you understand who they are, right? So you might not like them because personality conflict, but you understand what they bring to the table and what their value is, and even in business, to the whole organization.
Yeah.
And if their value is greater than their, how do you say, their issues, then you deal with their value and you handle people's personality, and like in playing hockey, you try and direct them in a positive,
Yeah.
and trying to get the most out of them, because really at the end of the day you have an organization that you're dealing with, and in that organization you're trying to motivate people to pull the same rope, even when they're wanting to pull ropes in different directions. That line still has to go that way.
Yeah.
So it's sports, the sports world, the learning the sports, and the learning. Actually, I think nowadays people are so worried about winning, they don't learn to develop. And so development doesn't come from a win. It does sometimes. Most of the time, development comes from a loss, because what it does is teach you what you're not good at. And the stronger you get at what you're not good at makes your whole game stronger. So that development in the failure side of things and identifying what that is, instead of it bringing you down, it becomes a motivating part to move you forward. And if you get to do those things and learn, in my case, I always use the analogy, two analogies. One, same foxhole. So everybody in that room that you're with, either whether it's at work or not, are all in the same foxhole. You're all dealing with similar issues to go in a similar direction, the success of the business or the success of the team.
You're in the arena. The man in the arena.
That's right. and that is probably one of the biggest things to understand is that you all are on the same team sometimes, especially after pro hockey, because when you're getting paid to do something, you understand what that immediate goal is. You got to win.
But the attraction, and that's why sports and being a fan is fanatical. It's short for fan is short for being a fanatical. But it's, you had the opportunity to play at that level when, as a spectator, someone who just didn't have the athletic, physicality to play at that level, I still, and I think I speak for a lot of men and women, just yearn to have that feeling in the arena, on the field, in the arena. It's hard to describe if you never played sports, if you've never been in there, and to play at a higher level as an adult, you're able to escape from, just for a few minutes, just for the length of a ball game, and put yourself in the arena, and so it's fun, and the world loves it, And so I hope you value what y'all did. Y'all might have been playing a game, a 24-year-old Chris Valicevic keeping hockey puck from hitting in his head.
He pretty much had the same hairstyle as
Right.
I do right now.
Yeah, right. I remember your style, man. You had a good style.
That's why everybody still knows who I am, because the
Yeah.
hairstyle is the same. It hasn't changed in quite a while. But I mean, it's
But you get what I'm saying?
Yeah,
But I think he was trying to make this point too. The expectations sometimes of the parents is just unfair. I mean,
Yes.
winning, you don't get it. It's not winning.
So-
It's you out there with a group of people trying to accomplish something. Winning is just the score at the end of the game.
right.
But you think sometimes
Yeah,
we're
because-
missing that?
Well, I think what we end up missing is that everybody grows and everybody develops at a different level. So if you're not at this level right now, and say you're 12 years old, most of the guys I played with at 12 years old didn't play college hockey. Almost none of them. Right?
Mature.
And I was a small guy.
Yeah.
But there are some guys who are 12 years old. They're 6
Hair
foot
on
tall.
them and shit.
Yeah, and a mustache, right? Well, that starts to even itself out. So really, in that gap, what does this 12-year-old do to continue to develop? Because most of the time they're working on one skill set. They're stronger than everybody else. So in baseball, I can throw it by you, and I can hit it over the fence. Well, if you don't develop any other skills, that's all you have. And eventually you can't throw it by some people all the time. So what do you have now? Whereas the kid down here couldn't throw it by him, but he was productive. I told my son, I said, be productive, right? When you're productive,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean you're here or there, but
Yeah.
you're learning
Yeah.
how to get around certain obstacles
Yeah.
along your way, whether it's size, strength, like you're learning to adapt to the scenarios that you have. And eventually, when you have that growth spurt and stuff, now you have this inventory of knowledge about how to deal with things. And now you've just added the strength component that you never had. So you get all the finer skills before you get the brute force, right? And so the hard part I kind of see now and in everything, it's all about winning, especially at younger ages. It's not about development.
You gonna play like you practice. So you chewing a coach out while my kid's not playing. Well, I didn't see you at practice to see what was happening. It's
Yeah, and again, let them fail. One of the biggest things my kids fail. They do. They failed. They might get fussed at, but it's always get back up, because the other analogy I use is this glass is half full. Every failure is an opportunity for success. So what do I learn? How do I move forward? What do I learn? And if they get that mindset in them at an early age, it's the world didn't end when I failed. It's a conversation about where am I going, right? You failed. Why? Well, work on that. Like my mom always said, well, what was wrong? Well, what did coach say? Well, you better work on that, right? Like you start to develop that where you're not crushed by every failure. Matter of fact, it becomes motivating, because at some point in time, you start overcoming those little obstacles all the time. You start building some confidence that obstacles don't matter anymore.
right.
And those are the things that you try and teach kids nowadays. Like those obstacles are nothing more than an opportunity to overcome something.
That's true. All those wonderful lessons learned. Back to the Gators. So let's talk about your opinion on the demise of the league and the Gators. What ultimately did it just fat itself out? Do you think, or was it greed creeped in, or did promotions get complacent?
Well, being in the oil field, I can there's a couple different avenues on this. Number one, like I said, when we first got here, I think it was $5 a ticket in the upper bowl, or maybe $10, $40 you walk through the door, right? So a family of 4 walks through the door for
They got popcorn, a
40
seat,
bucks,
and
or
they're good to go.
I do think it was $5 or $7. I can't remember, but it wasn't expensive. So you could walk through the door at a decent price. You could buy some popcorn and some Cokes and stuff with the kids, have a beer, and it was a decent price. And eventually, what ended up happening is the Cajun Dome started going up. Family of 4 no longer walked through the door for $20 and $20 in concession. Now it was 40 or 50 bucks to get through the door. Another 40 or 50.
So
It's
instead of going to
$100.
10 games a year, now we're gonna squeeze in 4.
Yeah, you're going to squeeze in, and on multiple games in a week, you're going to pick your game and not go to multiple ones, right? That's some of it. Some of it is because the ownership didn't have some concession royalties at that point in time, and that's all a business deal. I can tell you the biggest thing is, back when we started, every major oil company had a decision-making hub in Lafayette. Unocal had headquarters here.
I didn't think about
Chevron had headquarters here.
And had a lot of
BP,
sponsorships.
Conoco.
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
you know, the oil field. I mean,
Yeah.
back when I got into it, there's a lot of entertaining
No, that's true. I didn't even
that
think
goes
of that.
along. So, but that's like any other market. It's pro. There's an entertainment value that goes on. So when you go to a Houston Aeros game, most of those season tickets are held by
Blocks.
corporations.
Yeah.
So they're corporate tickets. So out of our 12.5 a night, probably over 8,000 are corporate seats. Because
I didn't think of that. You're right. They took out of here about the same time y'all were going down.
so on the decline, on the about that year 5 I was here, the oil field started pulling their horns back to Houston.
yeah, and had 1 or 2 dips.
And so as that point in time when they're pulling out, when Unical's shutting down, well, all those decision makers that used to go to spend time with and game and understand and things like that, that was the entertainment value of it, right? They weren't there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So those tickets aren't needed. When I got to work for Baker Hughes,
Mm-hmm.
every division had, even the small division had 4. Some of the bigger divisions had like 10.
Mm-hmm.
And there's 30 different divisions.
Yeah.
That doesn't include Halliburton, Schlumberger, Weatherford, and I'm just talking the big majors. That doesn't include all the other oil field services that go along or the secondary services that come in behind, because if you're entertaining and they're your customer and you're out, you're moving along too. So, and that's in all aspects. So I'm guessing a good 8,000 of those tickets are all corporate.
And a combination of all those things. Well, look, they gave us, I think, 10 years, right? 05
They bounced out
for
for a couple years
and
and
then
then
tried to
came
come
back,
back, and then didn't work out. Hey, look, it was incredible while it lasted. What a great chapter for Lafayette. And it was, hey, man, it was a different time and place. It seems like it was yesterday, but it was a few years ago. So what's the next chapter for Chris?
Chris is learning how to be a partial empty nester right now. To be
How's that
honest with
going?
you. It's a
How's
little
that
difficult. We talked about the knee and the hips, so I'm learning how to play golf again because I used to do quite a bit of that. Settling in, I have a granddaughter. Enjoying a little bit of that, and just trying to figure out really how to do some things with my wife and I that don't revolve around our kids all the time, because we were running to baseball games in college. We're running back and forth to see people. My oldest son's a nurse in Baton Rouge, going to see that stuff, going to LSU games, UL games, Tulane games. So it's all that's
fun time.
Yeah, had a great time, but now it's starting to calm down, and we're talking more about adventures, things that we want to do that we've pushed off because we've had other obligations.
You still have family in Michigan or anywhere? You try to see those cats?
Brother and sisters both live in Michigan. I'm probably going to make it. I still have a grandmother who's going to be 99, and she's my second parent. When I grew up, my parents are divorced.
You're telling me we got to put up with you till you're 99 years old.
Listen, nobody will be able to hear me by then. They'll tune that tone.
Yeah.
That tone will be out. But no, I need to get up and see her and see my nieces and nephews. Everybody's grown now, so everybody's technically in college or graduated. So it's really it's the next chapter of my wife and I, and a lot of that has to do with learning what we want to do.
Yeah.
Like our new going out, going around, planning trips, because we spent plenty enough money chasing kids around for years. So
Look, I can relate to that. Well, look, here at the cafe, we're trying to, really dive into all the different cultures that make up Acadiana. It's as you picked up early and mentioned early in the podcast. We just have a unique place here, and it's just every different ethnic group, and it just scales from one end to the other. But man, y'all come by the cafe sometimes, and we'll keep the coffee pot going for y'all.
Well, I learned how to make a latte. Sketchy.
That's a start.
Sketchy learning how to
he's
make.
angling for
learning how to make a
after
latte.
he retired gig over here.
Listen, I'm going to need some service when I come. I'm just telling you. Don't want to. I'm used to breaking stuff, so burning down the cafe is not really an option.
He's gonna have a hockey fight in the cafe over here.
Well, if I bring enough hockey players over here,
There will be.
as long as it's just coffee and nothing else, I think we're safe.
That's good. Well, man, look, I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for stopping by and catching everybody up and reminiscing a little bit about the IceGators with a magical time. Thank you, and all your teammates. You keep up with a lot of those guys.
Yeah, I try and get everybody who's still in town over to the house at Christmas. Last couple of years been a little bit difficult, but mostly because all their kids, like mine, they're all finishing up their high school years and things. So we still have a McKay, a McEwitt. No, not a McKay. A McNeil, a McEwitt, a Middlestead, a Shanahan, a Dumont, a McKegg. I'm trying to think of who else.
Man, all those Irish, Croatians, and all that stuff, y'all messing up our gene pool down here,
Listen,
man.
the problem is that's not on me. The problem is the Southern girls are tough
They
to
like
beat.
those.
They
Oh,
tough
man.
to beat.
All right, okay.
They tough to beat, and the food and the cooking and the family is tough to beat. That's the deal. Why do you want to go back? My brother and sister went back to snow type deal. I had no desire to get back to snow.
No, I'm with you there, man.
I'll
I'm not
endure
a
the
cold
heat
guy.
because the other 7 months are awesome.
Right.
As opposed to you get like 3.5 months up in Michigan,
Yeah.
and the other 7 months are freezing your tail off.
Yeah, it takes the fun out of it.
Yeah, I mean you gotta yeah.
You good?
I'm good. But I appreciate the time. I appreciate the invite. I appreciate you keep getting a hold of me because I have been a little bit busier than most.
No, that's cool, man. You're here.
That sales gig was pretty nice flexibility wise. This new gig is a little bit more rigid.
I bet so. All right, Chris Valicevic. Remember, get the app. Okay, go to the app store, Cafe Dayton. You can see the little coffee bean. Pop on it. Look at our Cafe Chronicles. That's our newspaper. Check out the other podcast on the app, and tell everybody about it. We're really picking up. Good, Chris. Thanks for coming by.
Appreciate you, sir.
Appreciate you, brother. All right, check y'all next time.
Peace.